Now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves all of us, and yes, even you, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. What we do here on this show, we put all this together into this gumbo here, this one message, this one philosophy. There's a hardcover book on this subject, this brand, this business, all of this. It is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And for those of you who don't know, let me tell you something about this show right here. All right, I'm gonna tell you a couple things about this show. First of all, this is my most favorite format of publishing. I've been writing since I started blogging in May of 2005. That was actually my first foray into internet publishing. And I started putting videos on YouTube later on that same year. And that was the place where most people who found me on the internet found me through basketball-based video. I didn't start a podcast formally until 2016. But as you can see, looking at the number episode that this is, we put out an episode every single day for over 4 years running now. But this is my favorite format. And here's how I know it's my favorite format. Because, well, actually, I'll tell you a couple reasons why. First of all, when I do this show, I don't have to do any editing. See, when I write something, I got to edit it and make sure that any grammatical errors or anything that I said, I can maybe say it a little bit differently, and I change the writing up and things like that. In video, is a lot of editing. You might have to change the lighting in it and the way that there's a whole bunch of video editing stuff I can't even explain. I'm not a video editor. Look at any of my videos, most of the time, those things are straight from the camera up to YouTube or wherever you're watching it. But this right here, I don't really do hardly any editing on anything on this show. Now, if I cough or sneeze or I have to stop to blow my nose in the middle of the episode, we get that edited out. But other than that, we go straight through on this, and it usually comes out exactly as it needs to be said. It's perfect. Me just saying exactly what I want to say. There's nothing to be misinterpreted. I can give full context to every idea I have. And let me tell you another reason why this is another way that I know for sure that this is my favorite platform of all the platforms that I have. I know that I've created something that is exactly what I want to say when I go back and I consume my own shit, right? You know that any of you who's a creator, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm just such a narcissist and maybe it is only me that does this. But whenever I write something that I know I wrote it perfectly and I said exactly what I wanted to say and it was like fucking on point, I go read my own shit. Like, damn, that was really good what I said right there. I get excited just to read it even though I'm the one who wrote it. Or if I make a video and I know I said everything, like everything was in the right place, in the right way, right tonality, right energy, right body language, everything, I go watch it again because it gets me excited. This show, of all the material that I produce, written content, video, and audio, this is the only platform where I basically go consume my own shit every single time I put something out. So what I'm saying is, in other words, I listen to every episode of this show the same way that you do. All right, so I go on the podcasting app and I actually listen to my own show, even though I'm the one who said it. I know exactly what I said because I know I'm putting the words together exactly as I want to say them, putting them out the right way. And there's a few of you who've been following me since even the basketball days on YouTube, and you read my stuff and you're like, yo, the audio, this show right here, the masterclass Work on Your Game is your best work. I like this more than the videos. I like this more than the audio. Maybe it's just because people just prefer the audio platform. It's easier to consume. Like you could be doing something else while listening to this. I don't know what the reason is, but I do appreciate the people who have been giving me that feedback. And I'm letting all y'all know this is my favorite platform. So if they stripped everything away and said, Dre, the new law is you can't produce content on every platform. You got to pick one and you can only do one. You can't do more than one. What would it be? It would be this one right here. It would be the audio show. So if you want to get Dre Baldwin's ideas, Dre Baldwin's material, content, philosophies, whatever, and you just want to focus on one thing because I got so much material in so many different places, I get it. My suggestion to you is listen to every episode of this show right here. This is the best place to get exactly what I think, exactly how I feel, where nothing can be misinterpreted as long as you consume 100% of the context of what I'm saying. You just consume all of every episode, nothing can be misinterpreted. All right. Now, of course, people could take shit out of context. Who knows what people do on the internet these days, but we're not worried about them. We're not worried about the one-dimensional individuals. We concerned with the people who actually want to work on their games, those of you who are listening to this show right now. So again, appreciate you coming in to this show. Appreciate you checking in every single day and listening to what we got to say here, because one thing that those of you, again, who know me, and even those of you who don't, we will talk about any subject here. In case in point, this topic that we're talking about here today. The topic here today is how social justice warriors are actually hurting the black community. Let me say that title again, just in case you are not sure you heard me say what you just heard me say. How the social justice warriors are hurting the black community. Now, why I'm talking about this? Well, first of all, I'm black. Second of all, we know that in the majority of 2020, it seems like it's been a whole year in itself, from late May 2020, when George Floyd died and the video went viral. Everybody knows about that, no matter where you live. From then until now, whenever you happen to be listening to this, we're going into the last quarter of 2020. It seems like that part alone has been a year unto itself. It seems like from the time COVID struck America, when it really struck, which was around March of 2020, it seems like that's been a year within it. So it seems like we lived multiple years all in 1 year in 2020 so far. And I'm recording this before the presidential election, so it might be another. It might feel like we lived 4 years in 1 year in the year 2020. It's been quite interesting. But since George Floyd died in late May 2020, of course, there's been a lot of civil unrest, is the best phrase that I've heard. There's a person that actually one of my coaching clients, he sends an email out to his clients and his business, and he used that phrase. It's the first time I heard anybody use that phrase. I said, that's a good phrase. I can use that, or we can cover everything. It's basically an umbrella statement that nobody can be offended by. Civil unrest. But we know there's been a lot of it going on, and a lot of it's been on the subject of race, and a lot of people have a lot of different opinions. And guess what? I'm a person, and I got some opinions, and I've shared some of them here on this show. And one thing that, like I just said a moment ago, I'll talk about anything here on this show. And some of it is based on my opinion, some of it is based on fact, and some of it is kind of a mix between the two. But I will always make clear to you when I'm sharing my opinion and when I'm giving you a fact. I will not try to fool you into thinking that my opinions are actual facts that you should accept because I'm presenting them as facts when they're actually not. And there are a lot of people, a lot of news outlets that we are supposed to be trusting to give us objective information who aren't willing to do that these days. And I talked about that in an episode that I did not too long ago when I said stop watching the news. That was masterclass number 1474. And it seemed like it wasn't that long ago, but it was actually damn near 200 days ago. Stop watching the news. Again, as I said, I feel like we lived many years all in 1 year here in 2020. But today I'm going to talk about this subject of why the social justice warriors are hurting black people. Because again, I'm black. Secondly, because everybody who's listening to this, regardless of how you feel about anything that's happened this year, whether we're talking government, politics, COVID, civil unrest, black people, Black Lives Matter, whatever's going on between different races and all of these different things that different people have been saying, regardless of where you stand, you know that it's going on. And work on your game would not be work on your game, and Dre Baldwin would not be Dre Baldwin if, knowing that all of us know that this is going on, I would just act like it's not happening, not talk about it at all. Now, there are many shows out there and hosts out there who are it appears very successful, popular individuals, well-spoken people with great ideas and great material who haven't touched on any of these things, and that's their prerogative. But our prerogative here, working your game, is that we don't act like something's not happening when it's actually happening. Okay? Now, I put out a poll on Instagram sometime in maybe early October 2020 when I said to people, listen, I got all these topics that I did live streams on Instagram, Facebook, Periscope, talking about some of these civil unrest, social things, political things, racial things. Should I put these out on the podcast app as well? Now, I'm re-recording this. I'm not putting the same audio. I'm actually recording it again directly into the mic specifically for the audio masterclass experience. And the voting was it was a little bit closer than I thought it would be. It was probably about 65-35 for yes. And the thing is, as I said, we're not going to act like something's not happening. We're not going to ignore a topic that obviously everybody knows about. Everybody has different opinions about. I want this to be a space where I'm going to, of course, address the topic. As I said, some of my opinions will be in here, but I'm also going to be as objective as a human being possibly can be when sharing what I'm sharing. And again, as I say almost all the time on this show, you can check me if I'm not being objective on things. If I say something is objective and is not, you can let me know that I'm not being objective about that thing. And that means I will, when I say being objective, here's what I mean. It means I will let you know, hey, here's how one side of this may feel, and I understand why, because X, Y, Z. Here's why they should feel. They can feel that way, and I understand it. But here's also how another side may feel the exact opposite from them, and here's why they may feel it, X, Y, Z. And I understand that as well. That's what I mean when I say being objective. Most of the people that I know aren't capable of doing that on many subjects, especially ones in which they are emotionally engaged. So me, I'm not emotionally drawn to either side of the political argument, either side of the social justice conversation, police against black people, white supremacy against Black Lives Matter against All Lives Matter. I'm not on either side of any of these. I don't have a dog in any of these races, but I do know what's going on. And again, I try to look at things logically and objectively and present an argument that anybody can respect, even if you don't completely agree, an argument that you can respect. Like I talked about in math class number 1616, what Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter both get wrong, holding both sides accountable for some of the things that they're doing that are not helping even their own cause, helping their own side, and is definitely not drawing people into them who are actually objective, logical, rational thinking individuals, at least from my perspective. Now, my perspective of what logical and rational is could be completely different from yours. See, that's why I'm explaining how I'm giving you an opinion that's basically based on my point of view. But everybody can have different definitions of that word. But anyway, is that enough of an introduction? All that being said, the topic once again, how SJWs, that stands for Social Justice Warriors, are hurting black people. Let me give you a definition of what a social justice warrior is. Now, I usually grab my definitions from Merriam-Webster or from Google Dictionary. Today, I had to go grab it from Urban Dictionary. All right, if y'all don't know what Urban Dictionary is, go look it up. It's a very interesting dictionary website that basically takes certain words and defines them in ways that they get talked about in urban culture. I mean, Urban Dictionary is a pretty clear definition of what they're about. So let me give you the definition from Urban Dictionary. Quote, a pejorative term for an individual who repeatedly and vehemently engages in arguments on social justice on the internet, often in a shallow or not well thought out way for the purpose of raising their own personal reputation. Close quote. That is a social justice warrior. What got me thinking about this subject was, this is probably in September maybe of 2020, ESPN analyst, an ESPN analyst by the name of Kirk Herbstreit. Now, if you don't know who Kirk is, you don't need to. He is a baby-faced white guy who used to play quarterback in college, I believe. I don't think he played much professional football, but he's been an ESPN analyst for a long time. I've always known him as an ESPN analyst. The guy looks pretty young, but I feel like he's been on ESPN for like 20 years. But he looks probably younger than he actually is. He's probably maybe in his late 30s, probably early 40s, maybe. But anyway, Kirk was on TV, and Kirk is this, again, baby-faced, picket fence white guy. Now, on this ESPN show, him and some college football analysts, they are discussing the social justice, all the stuff going on in America because they don't have a choice. And because working for ESPN hopped over the fence and they are very leftist. I think anyone who follows ESPN will have to agree with that. Again, whether you agree with the left or not, everyone has to agree ESPN has jumped to the left side of things when it comes to politically, socially. Kirk Herbstreit works for ESPN. And in his he had like a 2-minute clip. And y'all know on TV, the way it works, you pretty much get somewhere between 30 seconds and 2 minutes to speak. And you got to speak in sound bites, then the next person talks. So it was like this split screen with 4 different people talking, all college football analysts, talking about social justice. Kirk Herbstreit, this white guy. And he starts talking about how, we as white people, we all got to do better, and talking to some of my black friends or players, and they're talking about how when they get pulled over by a cop, they got to put their hands on 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. And he's saying these things, and it's fine. I mean, this is what he wants to say. Whether he believes it or not, I don't know. I don't know Kirk Herbstreit. How he feels is how the fuck he feels. Now, while he's talking, though, this is the part that made this interesting. As he's talking about this, now, mind you, he's a white guy from wherever the hell he's from. He ain't from no hood. He ain't never been to the hood. And he probably never will be. And he starts crying as he's talking about this, how black people got to put their hands on 10 and 2. This guy starts breaking down, and he's crying on TV. And I remember watching this video because I looked on the morning after this happened. I'm looking on social media on Twitter, and I just looked to see what are the top trending, and Kirk Herbstreit is trending. So I'm like, why is Kirk Herbstreit trending? Now, this is why I know everybody's talking about social justice. I'm like, all right, he said something. He either said something that got people mad or he said something that got people happy. What'd he say? So I looked him up, and people are showing a little clip of the 2 minutes that he spoke. So I went on ESPN's app, and I watched the whole clip of what he said. It was only about 2 minutes long. And he starts crying. And as I'm watching the clip, now mind you, let me be clear, ladies and gentlemen. He's not talking about something that actually occurred. He's just talking about how he heard from some black people how these things with the police and how they're afraid of cops. Again, through him, he is saying that the people have told him this, and he starts breaking down, crying, just talking about the idea, the concept that black people have these adverse relations with police officers. Now, I'm black, and watching that clip by Mr. Herbstreit, I couldn't help but laugh. I laughed while I was watching it, and I remember tweeting, quote tweeting that clip of him saying what he's saying. And I said, am I the only one who laughed at this? And nobody responded. So I don't know if I'm just an insensitive individual. I don't know if, well, one thing I do know for sure is that that's not the thing that social media wants to hear. Somebody said they laughed at that. That's not. Now, had I been white, then I would have been probably attacked and attacked mercilessly by people on social media. But since I'm black, I was given a pass of being just completely ignored when I asked the question. But I remember looking at this, and I'm looking at, Kirk is trending, so I'm just looking at the tweets of people talking about Kirk Herbstreit the next day, and there is a whole parade of both black and non-black people applauding Mr. Herbstreit about how he is so great and how he's a real one and how he's just saying positive things about the fact that he was willing to be quote unquote courageous. It takes no courage to say something like that when you already work for a left-leaning company and your social media, which is also very left-leaning. It takes no courage to say anything like that. Doesn't mean he didn't actually believe it. We don't know. But people were giving him this applause as if it was such a great thing that he did. And it led to some ideas being sparked in me, which is why we're here for today's episode, and we 17 minutes into this, I haven't even gotten to my first point. But I'm giving you all that background. If you want to go look up Kirk Herbstreit, just look up Kirk Herbstreit crying, all right, and you'll find the clip. It'll be easy to find. Social media wants you to see it, and you can come up with your own. You can draw your own conclusions about it. Maybe I'm just an asshole who is completely detached from his emotions. But when I saw this guy crying, this white man who ain't never been in the hood and ain't got nothing to do with the hood, and he's crying about something that didn't even happen. He's just crying about the concept of it happening. It struck a nerve with me, and that's why we're talking about this here today. Point number one, and Kirk Herbstreit, just in case people didn't catch why I'm bringing him up, he is a social justice warrior. Let me get that definition again before we get into our first point. A pejorative term for an individual who repeatedly and vehemently engages in arguments on social justice on the internet, often in a shallow or not well thought out way for the purpose of raising their own personal reputation. Kirk Herbstreit raised his own personal reputation by crying on ESPN for about 30 seconds of his 2-minute presentation that he did that day on ESPN. Now, I don't know what his intention is. I can't judge another person's intent. And it's not like he was arguing with anybody. He was just saying it. But argument doesn't mean going back and forth with another person in a heated way. Argument just means I'm making this point for other people to understand. So different definitions of argument. And did he raise his reputation? He absolutely did. And did a whole bunch of black people get excited about this and give him a social media round of applause? He took a social media victory lap, Mr. Herbstreit did, over the next 48 hours because of his crying on TV, because of his tears on ESPN from his house. Yeah, he lives in some suburb that ain't never seen a black person. All that being said, let's get into point number one. The topic, once again, is how these SJWs are actually hurting black people and moving them backwards, at least the ones who are moved by these shows, this acting that these people are doing. Number one, it alleviates the need for black people's own personal accountability. The one thing about this show that I think I've said enough times, and I will say more times in the future, is that we always bring the subject back to ourselves. Now, no matter what we're talking about, whether it's something that somebody else did, whether it's dealing with other people, or there's something that happened to you, we always bring the subject back to ourselves. And these social justice warriors, especially the white ones, who come out and they make these boisterous statements about how things are so terrible for black people and how they feel bad. The white person feels bad about how bad black people have it in America, and they have these shows of emotions, these public displays of emotion, and they're crying and all these things, and they basically denounce their own whiteness in order to appease black people on social media. Let me not say in order to, because I don't know what they're trying to do, but the result is they appease black people on social media. This alleviates black people's own personal accountability, because the black person looks at this and they can say, oh, well, look, here's another white person who has success, who has some name, has some attention on them, has some accomplishments under their belt, they have a resume, they're also telling us that it's not our fault. It's not the black person. The black person doesn't need to do anything. It's us, it's the white people that need to change. It's the white people that need to do better. It's the white people who need to denounce their own whiteness in order to help us black people. We don't need to do anything. We can just stay how we are. We just need more white people to feel how this one social justice warrior white person feels, and everything will be good. We don't need to be held accountable for anything. That's one of the biggest ways that these SJWs are hurting black people. And there are black ones who do the same thing. But it is even more impactful when a white person does it. When a white person denounces their own whiteness in the name of being righteous about how black people have it so terrible in America. 2 NBA coaches, Greg Popovich and Steve Kerr, they were on their own podcast. A podcast that was, I believe it was Kerr and Pete Carroll, who's the coach of the Seattle Seahawks NFL team. They had a podcast together, and those 2 guys had Popovich on as a guest. And that the 3 of them are on there talking. This was shortly after the George Floyd situation. And they were basically denouncing their own white. They were basically apologizing for being white on their own podcast. And Bill Simmons, who I like, I'm a big fan of Bill Simmons, my favorite sports writer, probably of all time. He doesn't write anymore, but I still like his podcast. He amplified this because it was on his network, the Ringer Sports Media Network. He amplified this. Bill Simmons is not that big of an SJW. I think he tries to stay out of that conversation. But if he does touch on it, he leans SJW-ish. He's not that, but he leans that way. Steve Kerr is a huge SJW. Greg Popovich is as well. And they're just on this show just apologizing for their whiteness. And I was like, are these guys really doing this? I tweeted about that too. And that was also met with no response whatsoever. Again, you can draw your own conclusions to why that is. All that being said, when these SJWs come out arguing that they need to do more, especially the white ones, to help black people who are not doing anything to help themselves, it alleviates the personal accountability for the blacks. And we, as black folks, along with them, lionize people who are already not doing anything to bring the community up. The people who may end up, as we call, victims. They're victims of some systemic something. They're victims of the wealth gap. They're victims of what some people consider an opportunity gap. I've covered all of these things on this show already. You can check the archives. These have been covered in the year 2020. The Law of Association, ladies and gentlemen, states that the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. So if there are weak links in your chain, meaning looking at your own community and you see some people who are not doing things to bring the community up the way that you are, what do you do with them? Do you hold them accountable for getting better and becoming a stronger link, or do you make excuses for them being weak links? You got a choice. What are you doing? A social justice warrior, again, especially the white social justice warriors, are creating an excuse for the weak links in the black community for being weak links. Oh, it's us that needs to do better. Us white people need to do better. That's the reason why these black people are weak links, because we as whites need to recognize what's going on in the black community. No, you don't. It ain't your fucking business what's going on in the black community because you ain't black. Now, us in the black community, what are we doing? Are we forcing the weak links to get better? Or are we holding them accountable? Or are we creating excuses or amplifying the excuses given to us by some white person who ain't got nothing to do with what's going on in our neighborhoods? Are we amplifying the excuses that they create so that the weak links don't have to get weaker? In sports and business, the answer is clear and obvious. In sports, if you got a weak link on your team, that weak link will be attacked continually until either A, your team loses, or B, the weak link is made stronger, or C, the weak link is removed from the team. In the business world, it's the exact same thing. If your weak link is that you're terrible at generating leads, that weak link will continue to hurt your business until you either go out of business or you fix that weak link. You don't have a choice to make an excuse for the weak link. You can make all the excuses you want. You're going to be leaking money out of your business, so eventually there is no business and nobody has a job. The environment itself will force you to choose to do something about that weak link in the sports world and in the business world. The answer is clear and obvious. I'm an entrepreneur. Used to play sports. As an entrepreneur, you eat what you kill, generally speaking. Weak links in the business world, they die out, plain and simple. If you're weak in the business world, you die out. You will lose your business or you will be out of business. What's happening these days as regards to these social justice warriors, notwithstanding the innocent, there are a few weak links who have become known because of certain interactions and engagements and things that have been amplified by the media. And we ignore the fact that some of these weak links are weak links. Sometimes they're just weak links Now, just because the media is promoting them and the social justice warriors are telling us that it's their fault that the weak link is a weak link does not change the fact that they were a weak link before anybody was even paying attention to them. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? If you're not from the community, it's not your business to discuss what you need to do to help our community, because listen, nobody in our community is discussing what we need to do to help yours. See, the problem is we as black folks or whatever group feels like you are marginalized or not being paid attention to, it is our job to have that idea as a group. It's our job to say we need to do more to force these weak links to toughen the fuck up. Otherwise, they're going to keep bringing us down. And I've found that there are many black people, not all black people, many black people are way too happy to receive this, quote, support, close quote, from these social justice warriors who are not from the community, not of the community, and they're getting on their TVs and on their phones and telling everyone what they need to do to help the community that they're not even a part of. And we're like, yes, that's exactly what we need. Thank you for saying that, Mr. or Mrs. Social Justice Warrior. What the hell they got to do with what's going on in our community? Rhetorical question. You think on it as I move on to point number 2. The topic here today is how social justice warriors are hurting the black community. Number 2, they are reinforcing narratives that are not the real issues for black people. And I talked about this already. The biggest issues facing black people in America. Maybe, I know I put this out on YouTube already, but there are the biggest challenges facing black people in America. Yes, I did. This is episode number 1624, not even almost exactly a week ago. Every time a social justice warrior, especially people who are not black, repeat any social justice talking point, i.e. The police are the problem, the government's the problem, whoever the president is, they're the problem, slavery is the problem, some things that have been going on for the last 100 years, those are the problem. Anytime one of these white people who is not from the community repeats one of these talking points, the BLM black people, these are the social justice black folks, all right, they take that from the white person and they amplify it because it gives them more proof, quote unquote proof, more evidence, quote unquote, to believe that they have the right idea. Oh, it's not us as black folks who need to look at ourselves. Look, this white person right here just told us that they need to do better. Here's proof. Look, here's another white person saying it. Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's a successful white person. Here's an actor. Here's an NBA player. Here's a coach. Here's a famous business owner. They're all saying that they need to do better as white people. See, here's proof. Any black person who doesn't agree with that, what are you doing? You're hating. You're against us. You're not on the same side as us. They need to understand us. They need to see, quote, what is going on. This is the phrase that I've had used. I've heard said, I've heard seen written, and I've had even used against me sometimes when I have brought up these points of, hey, how about black people hold each other accountable? How about we hold ourselves accountable? And people say, well, Dre, you obviously don't realize what has been going on or what is going on. I say, yeah, I do see what's going on. It's just a matter of how we respond to it. We both see the same thing that's going on. Question is how we responded to it. This current movement for change, and I use both of those words, movement and change in air quotes, is not about anyone personally changing. It's about what everybody else needs to do. And that's backwards. See, a movement for change is not about what other people need to do. Change is about what you need to do. So any group that's talking about they want change, well, it begins in your own home. It begins in the mirror. It doesn't begin in the window. It begins in the mirror. Everybody understand what I'm saying there? I talked about this in masterclass number 1153 on the subject of leadership, the mirror and the window. When you look in the mirror, what do you see? You see yourself. When you look in the window, what do you see? You see whatever's on the outside, on the other side of that window. Most of the people who are quote unquote leading this quote unquote movement for quote unquote change are looking out the window. Oh, here's what everybody else needs to do to change, to make it better for me. People who are real leaders and understand the concept of accountability, they start by looking in the mirror. Now, what is these social justice warriors doing? The ones on the black side, what are they doing? Are they looking in the mirror or are they looking out the window? Almost everything I hear from them has something to do with what's on the outside of the window. The problem is, here's the problem with this. If every time you have a problem, it's somebody else's fault, it's something that somebody else needs to do to change, you'll always have problems because you can't control whether or not, or if, or when somebody else chooses to change. What if nobody changes? Now what you gonna do? Another rhetorical question for you to marinate on as we move on to point number 3. The topic here today is how social justice warriors are actually hurting black people and sending those who are susceptible to their messages backwards. Number 3, social media and the mainstream media. The mainstream meaning like the newspapers and the TV networks. They're all on social media these days too. So media in general. And these social justice warriors, they're all on the same team. They're all on the same side, which is fine. I mean, if people want to be on the same team, they can. There's nothing wrong with teaming up, right? Here's the issue with them all being on the same team. Black people who live in that bubble, which we just talked about not too long ago, that was episode number 1626. See, black people who live in that bubble of only looking at social media, mainstream media, and they're following some of these social justice warriors, people who are always telling you why you're not the problem, why black people are not their own problem, but that white people need to do more to help you out. Black people who live in that bubble never hear anything other than those messages. That's all they hear. That's all they see, and that's all they know. And then they'll go out and argue those messages because they believe they have proof, facts, and evidence on their side. You hear enough of the same message for long enough, and everybody, from so many different voices, the same message from so many different people who look different, people who have success and resumes underneath their names, you will come to see that point of view not as an opinion. You will not see it as a point of view. You will see it as an absolute fact that cannot be challenged. And anyone who does challenge it is obviously an idiot, obviously doesn't know what's going on, is obviously just hating. You see how this works? Any person who believes that all the information on their side are absolute facts that cannot be challenged does not want to hear anything other than that, even if everything else that they hear could help you at least open your mind. But you wouldn't know that it could open your mind because you don't even want to hear it. You never heard it in the first place. I think as black folks, we're headed for trouble on many fronts right now. And it has nothing to do with anything that a white person is doing. Cop, government official, social media influencer. Has nothing to do with any of that. After hearing Mr. Herbstreit, the ESPN guy, and his tears on TV, I saw what people were saying. I saw the responses. I saw that there was not a single person with a large following, black person, disagreeing with it, criticizing it, ridiculing it, saying, okay, why is everybody getting excited about this random white dude who ain't got nothing to do with the community, talking about what he and they as white people need to do for black folks. I didn't see anyone, not one person, saying this. Now, does that mean nobody was saying it? Absolutely not. It just means it was not being amplified. The message that was being amplified was, Kirk is great. Give him a round of applause, pat him on the back. Somebody get this man a tissue. He's amazing. He's on our team now. Bullshit. How is anything that white man cried about or bloviated about there on ESPN going to help the community? Another rhetorical question for you to marinate on. You shouldn't have to think on that one too long because it ain't no answer. Let's recap today's class, which is how the social justice warriors, especially white social justice warriors, are not helping black people, but actually sending them backwards, and ain't too many of us as black people who even recognize what's happening. Point and the definition of social justice warrior, again, a pejorative term for an individual who repeatedly and vehemently engages in arguments on social justice on the internet, often in a shallow or not well thought out way for the purpose of raising their own personal reputation. Number 1, it alleviates the need for personal accountability within the black community. These social justice warriors come out arguing they need to do more to help black people who are not doing anything to help themselves. No, we don't need more help from them. We need to strengthen the chain. The way you strengthen a chain is by eliminating or strengthening the weak links. In the sports world, in the business world, if you do not eliminate or strengthen your weak links, that will be the undoing of your team or your business. In life, if you don't do anything to help the weak links, they will continually bring the community down. And in our communities, as black people, if we are not holding the weak links accountable, which we are not doing much of in 2020, all they're going to do is continually bring the community down. But there are many people who don't even want to hear about that talk. I'm going against the grain by even saying this. Point number 2, reinforcing narratives that are not the real issues for black people. The real issues for black people have nothing to do with white people. As I talked about in masterclass number 1624, so you can have me on the record and on point for exactly what I said. And if anything changes, I'll do another episode. Every time one of these blue check non-blacks repeats a social justice talking point, it gives the social justice black people more reasons to believe they have the right idea because it gives them more evidence in there. It gives them more bullets in their holster as proof that what they've been saying is actually true. Point number 3, social media and the mainstream media and the social justice warriors are all on the same team, which is a fine thing if people want to team up. The problem is the black people who live in those bubbles never hear anything other than those messages. You hear the same thing often enough, even if it is an opinion, you start to believe that it's a fact because you have not heard anything different. This is what I mean when I say you may be in a bubble, as I talked about in mass class number 1626. I don't need to say nothing else about this topic, but I'm sure we'll have more to talk about in the future. Work on your game. Dre, all